Welcome back to She's the Business podcast. I'm Jessica Osborne, your host, and today I'm answering a question that came into me after the last solo episode I posted. So we're answering that question today of what stage or phase should your business be in when you seek to implement the strategies that enable growth to happen in your business, which are the 4 that we talked about in my last solo episode. So stay tuned. This is coming right up. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne. I'm a marketing strategist, a business coach, been coaching for a decade now and in marketing strategy for businesses and brands for well over 25 years. We're getting closer to that 3-decade mark, which is super exciting. This podcast is a space for you to feel like you're connecting with other women just like you, who have had a career, who've maybe got families, got all of the things going on. You're building a business because you see a need in the market, a need out there in the community that you can help people with, and you likely want to create a bit of freedom and flexibility in your own life as well, as I certainly did when I started out. So I've bought this podcast, I've created it with a bunch of amazing guests. Each guest brings something unique, different topics. So we talk everything from business strategy to energetics to spirituality, to the strategies that you might need for your health, your wealth, your fitness, everything that goes into making you successful as the owner of your own business. So it's made by women, for women, entrepreneurs specifically. I hope you enjoy the weekly dose of motivation and inspiration. Now, today's question is, what stage should I be in? When is the right time to implement these kind of strategies? Are they for beginners or are they for established businesses? And I thought this is a really important question because so often I hear people say, oh yes, I really understand that I need to do XYZ, whatever it was, but first I think I need to do this instead. And so they go off down a different pathway, which usually is a detour pathway, brings them back eventually to the path they should be on. But now so much more time has elapsed and expired, and really you're still at that same starting point. So my answer is there is no right time to do it. It is all of the time. The 4 strategies that we talked about in the last episode, the last solo, actually have a purpose, more so to address the strategic constraints that are really common. Every single coaching business will experience these constraints at one point of time or another. And by implementing these strategies, you are removing the friction. You're removing the constraints that are going to stop your business from growing. So let me just explain that a little bit further. I'll quickly go through what the constraints are and how they apply to the strategies. You can go back to the other episode to listen in more about each strategy as I talk a lot more in depth about it there. But the best thing is to know, well, as long as you're set up in business, you've got yourself up and running, you've got a way for people to pay you, you have maybe been working with some clients already, then yes, this is for you. You do not need an audience. You do not need a website even. You don't need a tech setup of any particular kind, as long as you're already functioning in some way or form as a business. You're past that initial setup phase. You may also be 20 years down the track. You might have been in business for a long time, but maybe you're plateaued. You're at a point where the leads are drying up. They might be harder to come by. Maybe you're feeling like the growth isn't happening and certainly hasn't been happening for a while. So how do you get unstuck? How do you get off this plateau? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. So what are the constraints that prevent growth, that cause you to be stuck, plateaued, not gaining momentum at all? Well, the first one, the constraint, is around recognition. So no recognition. This is where you're feeling like you're invisible, you're being overlooked. People aren't seeing you as the person that they need to hire to solve the problem in the business. So there's just this lack of recognition going on. Basically, that's quite simple. So the strategy that we deploy to address that constraint is the first one, the differentiation strategy, which is different to niching, which I explain in that episode. The second growth constraint is conversion. Super simple. Like if people aren't buying your stuff, it is a constraint on growth because you're getting no revenue. There's no one signing up. Now, we can also talk about this, the constraint being, why aren't they buying? Well, really, when people aren't buying what they need, what's something that they need and maybe want, but they're not buying it from you, they may be buying from somebody else, then that is a lack of trust, a lack of confidence that you are the right person, that you're going to help them get to the outcome. Now, the strategy that we deploy for that, which adds a huge amount of instant buyer trust, confidence, credibility, is your signature solution. That is the strategy we deploy to address the constraint of conversion, of the lack of trust, lack of people saying yes. You'll know that this is happening for you if you've got people who are kind of interested, they're in your world, they're listening, maybe they've even reached out to have a call, but then they sit on the fence, they're not sure, they've got to decide, maybe they go away and think and don't ever come back. You know that that's happening because they're out there basically looking at other options, comparing you, they're not sure that you have the goods for them. So those two strategies combining together, all of these things are links. They're not singular things on their own. They all compound together. So the first one is they recognize that you're the right person. B, that you have the way that will get them to the outcome the best possible way. The third constraint is the constraint around profitability. So what generally happens with any coaching business is you start to have some clients and then you reach a ceiling of like absolute maxing out your time capacity. And usually that's way below where you want to be with your revenue, your earnings, and the profit. So what tends to happen is people just try to add more in. They're like, well, maybe I'll hire someone to add more time. But when you start doing that, you're actually adding huge amounts of back-end overhead expenses. The expenses go up and usually the profit margin actually shrinks. So that's not necessarily the best option for you right now. The best option is looking at your offer ecosystem. How are your offers compounding into additional sales, future sales, extending the customer lifetime value? That is the strategy that we deploy to get rid of the growth constraint around your capacity that's preventing your profit from growing. Now, the fourth one is basically predictability. How are you having predictable demand, a predictable amount of leads, sales coming in so that you've got a business you can rely on financially? You're not wondering month to month, are we going to have some sales this month? Yes or no? You don't have that fluctuation going on unless you decide to have it. Maybe sometimes you might decide, like I do, over school holidays, that's a bit of a downtime for me in terms of client work. I like to do my client work in the term time, have school holidays where I'm fairly free and open in terms of my schedule. I do always have some work, but it's much, much, much less, like 10% of the amount that I might do during the term time. Of course, there's a good reason for that because the kids are at home. We've got things on. We're often going on holiday. We go camping, many, many things. And I don't really want work to be in the way of living that life. So the strategy that you deploy in order to have that predictability and that sort of control over what you've got coming in is called your demand system. And really simply, it is a system that's designed to feed the right people into the right place of your offer ecosystem to get the purchasing happening, basically, and get them signing up with you. And that's really all there is to it. So as I said, please head back to my previous solo episode where I talk about the 4 strategies. Now you can apply why do we even need them, what those growth constraints are that we're addressing with those strategies, and understand that on a much deeper level. And yes, it is right for you as long as you've started. If you're sitting on the sidelines with an idea for a business, you haven't started yet, then you're not going to be implementing these strategies right now because you don't have a business yet. But if you have a business that exists, and whether you are working with clients, maybe you're kind of starting and you've just had the first few inquiries and it's not going as planned, then yes, absolutely. These are what I call fundamental, that's the word I was looking for, fundamental strategic elements of any business. Every single business has these in, especially the ones that are growing successful. They have these strategies because they're removing the friction from growth, from sales, from clients signing on. They've removed that effectively by implementing these strategies. Now, they are not cookie cutters. They're not like, here is a funnel to use in your business. It's the same as mine. That's not what happens, because one business to another are different. Even if you're the same kind of business, your offers, your model, your way of working, your clients are all likely to be quite different. So it's about being able to apply the right system that fits your business, your life, your clients, your audience, that will make it work for you. And that's what I teach inside Business Jam, is how to make those decisions, how to choose, how to know which one will fit best with what, so that you create something that actually functions for you and works and can work for you while you're not working. That's it from me today. Super quick one. I'm heading off to Pilates and I've got a deadline to meet. So thank you for hanging out and tuning in. I will be back again next week with another episode. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you get She's a Business in your playlist every week. And I'd love it if you gave a rating or a review if you've been finding these episodes super useful. Okay, thank you. See you soon. Bye.